My cousin falsely accused me of assault, and now, after almost 10 years, my family is finally reaching out to me. I grew up in a very typical household. My parents worked a lot but always managed to take care of me and my three older sisters. We weren't an overly close family, but there were never any major issues either. The same went for my extended family. They lived a few hours away, and we'd see each other during summer holidays or Christmas, getting along just fine. But as we grew older, we naturally drifted apart as everyone got busy with their own lives. I'm 31 now, and this all started back in 2014 when I was 22 and attending university. One day, I received a phone call from my mother that completely turned my life upside down. I didn't answer at first because I was gaming with friends, but she immediately called again. In our family, that was an unspoken rule. If someone called twice in a row, it was urgent, like someone had died. So I excused myself and picked up the second call. The moment I answered, all I could hear was chaos on the other end, like people were arguing loudly. When my mom realized I had picked up, she moved to another room, and I could hear the door close behind her. She was crying, and I remember asking what was going on. My memory of that conversation is a bit hazy now, but she basically asked if I had anything to confess about my cousin Eve. Eve, who is on my mom's side of the family, is 7 years younger than me, 15 at the time, and I hadn't even seen him for several years by then. I was confused and just said no, asking her what this was all about. That's when she broke down even more and started accusing me of assaulting Eve when we were younger. She said Eve had told everything to my sister, who then told my mom and my aunt. My world shattered as I listened, completely blindsided and devastated by what I was hearing. When she was 9 and I was 16, she was playing in my room when I walked in and started kissing and feeling her under her clothes. My mother yelled at me to say something, but I couldn't. It was so ridiculous that I thought it had to be a joke. The last thing I remember saying was that it's not true and that he's lying. But then my mom kept talking about how he gave such a detailed account of where and how. She kept asking, "Did you do this? Did you do this?" And I just screamed back, "No." At the end, my mom put me on speaker and both my parents told me they didn't want anything to do with me and to never contact them again. Later that day, 2 of my sisters texted me pretty much saying I was disgusting and then blocked me. I know it's weird, but after that call, I took a long shower and called and texted everyone. No one answered, and the ones who hadn't blocked my number already quickly did so. The only thing I heard back was my dad texting me to stop calling them and that they needed to heal. That was 9 years ago, and I haven't talked to anyone in my family since. To say this messed me up is an understatement. I was so drunk and stressed out after that I barely ate anything. It didn't help that I had to defend my bachelor's thesis soon after. Luckily, my co-writer noticed something was wrong and saved me by keeping the conversation under control so I could focus on the easy parts. Without him, I'm sure I would have failed. Needless to say, no one came to my graduation, and then the worst time of my life began. I thought the police would come to my door and arrest me for sexual abuse for the first year. I didn't get any jobs and had to live off of the money I had saved. I drank a lot in Didoxy and became angry and violent. The only reason I didn't hurt anyone was because no one was around. My neighbor called the police on me once after I broke a glass, but I was able to convince them I had just dropped it, and they left because no one else was in my apartment. Instead of sleeping, I spent my nights planning how I could hurt E and make sure no one ever found out. I even thought about how I could do the things she had accused me of, but much worse. My first real job in my field was in late 2015. I know that's not something I'm proud of. Then things started to get better. I spent all of my time at work because it gave me something regular to do. It took a while to get better, but I drank less and smiled more. I lived cheaply and made good money, so for my birthdays I bought myself nice gifts like a VR headset, a motorcycle, Lego, and other things. Also, last year I moved out of my bad apartment and bought a small house. It had been a dream of mine for a long time to have my own garage and garden to take care of, and this has made me feel even better. My life is okay now, but I still have problems. Antidepressants have helped me for a few years, but not in a good way. All they did was get rid of my bad thoughts and replace them with dead ones. It's almost impossible for me to trust other people. I've tried dating, but I've only managed to go on 2 dates with different women. It's tough to hold a normal conversation when it comes down to it, and the thought of explaining my family situation is daunting. What would I even say to a potential partner? Oh, by the way, my family accused me of a terrible crime, and we haven't spoken since, but I swear I didn't do it. It just feels impossible to navigate. My field is heavily male-dominated, so the only woman I regularly talk to is my therapist, who I really like and trust. A few days ago, I received a text from my mother. It felt surreal, and I was honestly afraid to open it. I just stared at the notification for hours, paralyzed. Yesterday, a second message came through. Translated, they basically said, "Hi, it's been so long since we've talked. We miss you and want to know how you're doing." My mom went on to write a long message about my sisters and how my nieces and nephews are growing up. I didn't even know I was an uncle. Know that we love you and always will love Mom and Dad. The second text message said, "Hello, my name is... We understand if you don't want to talk to us after what happened, but please listen. Last month, you were brought up at a family gathering." During this time, she was playing down everything that had happened to her. It got so awkward that she finally admitted nothing had happened, that she might have just dreamed it. We were all shocked. When we last spoke, we thought we were protecting E and did what we believed was the only thing we could do at the time. We know that doesn't excuse how you were treated. What she did was wrong, and we're all angry at her. We've called everyone who knew about the accusation and told them the truth. We all want to talk to you, and your sisters want you to meet their families. Please write back if you can find it in your heart to forgive us. Love, Mom and Dad. So, that's my situation now. I haven't responded, but they probably know I've seen the message. Honestly, I'm furious. All these old, painful memories are resurfacing. I don't want to forgive them, and I don't trust myself to be in the same room with them right now. Part of me wants to call my family and let loose, to guilt-trip them about everything I went through until they hit rock bottom, and then dedicate myself to making my cousin's life as miserable as possible. The other part of me wants to ignore them and just continue my life as it is. Just me, my motorcycle, and my garden to keep me company. I don't have any close friends, and the only people I talk to are my coworkers, but we're not that close. I called my therapist's clinic, but they told me she's on vacation for a few weeks, and I don't want to see anyone else. So now I'm turning to internet strangers. What do I do? Should I ignore them and keep living my life, or should I respond? And if I do respond, what should I say? Meeting them in person seems like a bad idea, at least for the foreseeable future, but I'm not sure how my life can improve by revisiting all of this. As embarrassing as it sounds, I've dreamed about the day they'd apologize, imagining them groveling and begging for forgiveness. But a simple text feels so anticlimactic now. 3 months have passed since my last post, and a lot has happened. Some for the better, and some for the worse. First of all, E is still a huge jerk. About a week after my family reached out, she also sent me a long apology text. I couldn't believe what I was reading. She went on about how she had been dealing with mental health problems for years, almost as if trying to use that as an excuse for what she did to me. She said she needed help, and her parents were supporting her through it. It felt like nonsense to me because, for as long as I've known E, she was always this bright, cheerful person. Until that horrible day in 2014. The entire message felt like a list of excuses for her actions, ending with the shortest, most insincere apology. Initially, my plan was to keep moving forward and gradually improve my life. But seeing her message pushed me to my breaking point. I felt the urge to lash out at her, to send the most hurtful response I could think of. However, the message I actually sent said, "You think your mental problems are bad? Try being cut off and abandoned by your entire family for 10 years, just as you're starting your adult life, and see how bad your mental state gets. I'm still dealing with the fallout, and the last thing I need is the person responsible for my pain offering me excuses. My other relatives might have been kept in the dark, but you knew the truth all along and never spoke up. You're lucky I didn't end my life because of this. My parents and siblings are one thing, but I will never be able to forgive you for the damage you've done to me and my relationships. I hope you rot in hell and never contact me again." She hasn't replied, but I saw she read the message, so maybe she got the hint to stay away. On the bright side, I did end up responding to my parents. My message wasn't too intense because we ended up having a deeper conversation over the phone. Hearing their voices again felt surreal. I used to associate those voices with safety and home, but now, after everything, it brought back a flood of bitter memories from the last time I spoke to them. Those voices were the ones that had once screamed accusations at me. I didn't do anything wrong, but the conversation lasted about 3 to 4 hours. Despite the difficulty for all of us, it turned out to be the most productive discussion I've ever had with my family. I expected a lot of excuses, but instead, they apologized profusely and admitted their mistakes. They told me that the weight of the situation had been heavy on them all these years, and that now that the truth was out, they struggled to reconcile with themselves. One of the hardest parts was when I asked why they hadn't believed me over Eve. They admitted they found it incredibly difficult, but felt Eve's account was so convincing that they had no choice. I told them that instead of cutting contact, they should have at least tried to get me some help, but they didn't give me any support. They acknowledged this, which was the most painful part for me. After the first year or two, they said they wanted to reach out and mend things, but they ultimately decided I wouldn't want to talk to them and that it would only make things worse. This frustrated me because it shouldn't matter what kind of person I am. What matters is that I'm their son, and that should come first. In the end, we agreed to stay in contact. While I'm not ready to visit them yet, it's a start. Although there's still a lot of anger in my heart, I'm hopeful that things can improve. Since that phone call, we've been checking up on each other regularly, and our conversations are slowly starting to return to how they used to be. I'm not sure when or if I'll visit them again, and I can't predict how it will go. How do you hug and say hello to the people who pushed you out of their lives? To update you all on the situation with Eve and the false accusations, it's been about 4 to 5 months since my last update, and I have some positive news. Many people suggested I should sue or take Eve to court. While I agree that her actions were unforgivable and deeply wrong, I don't believe a court case would be beneficial. This situation has been unresolved for 10 years, and I just want to move past it. Pursuing legal action would be costly, and I can't afford the thousands in legal fees. Plus, Eve never took it to court herself, which adds another layer to my decision. I'm still in touch with my parents, and believe it or not, I visited them about a week ago. They've also cut off contact with Eve, and it seems like they're experiencing a similar level of consequence as I did, which might feel like a form of justice. The visit went well. I haven't yet seen the rest of my family because I want to take things gradually, but we shared a nice dinner together. Regarding how I'd greet them, I was unsure about how to approach the people who disrupted my life so severely. Surprisingly, the greeting went better than I expected. I thought I'd be overwhelmed by hatred, but instead, I felt a sense of relief when I saw them. Perhaps it was the feeling that my life was inching back to some semblance of normalcy. I didn't hug them immediately, as our conversation was intense and emotionally charged. I needed to express just how much they had hurt me, and at one point, my mother was in tears as I detailed my darkest times. They admitted they couldn't undo the past, but expressed a desire to look forward with optimism. They even suggested the possibility of coming home for Christmas and reuniting with the rest of the family. I told them I wanted to take things slowly, but left the door open to that idea. While I'm still conflicted, the intense anger I once felt is slowly fading, and I'm starting to feel like a better person overall. It seems that the weight of the situation had been dragging me down for all these years, and now that I'm free from that burden, it feels good. I've also started dating again and met a wonderful woman with whom I'm slowly becoming serious. Life is improving, and for the first time in ages, I feel like things are on the upswing. Who knows what the next 10 years will bring, but I'm hopeful. For anyone reading this, take my story as a reminder that things can get better even if it takes a decade.